I think Renee would be the best person to give us a quick little rundown on all things 12th house. So what does the 12th house stand for in astrology, please?
Self-undoing, isolation. It's a purgatory energy. I don't want to make everybody think that it's all doom and gloom, but it is a house that you want to treat with respect and reverence. The journey of the 12th house, I always like to say, is like you're walking through fog, and you can't even, if you had your hand here, you can barely even see it. And as you walk through, you just have to have faith and trust in yourself. You have to surrender to the fact that you're here and you can't control anything other than the legs you have, putting one foot in front of the other and just going through with utter faith. And then when you really surrender and trust that process and trust that that's what you have to do, the gifts start coming to you. The fog clears a little bit more. You see a meter in front of you. Now you can tell you're on a path. Someone hands you a lantern and you can like walk through. It's very metaphorical in that way and vivid. And that's why I like to use imagery to explain it, because I think anything that's like the water houses, the 12th house is a water house. It's associated with Piscean energy, Neptune. Traditionally, I think, was it Saturn that ruled?
Yes, Saturn's the traditional ruler.
Traditional ruler. So it has some of that energy in there as well, which is kind of restrictive. And that's why you can feel like,
or was it Jupiter?
You're right, it's Jupiter.
It's Jupiter, sorry.
Jupiter. What am I saying? Anyway. It is Jupiter, but it does restrict you. It actually does. And I have Saturn in the 12th house, and I can talk about that later, but that's sort of the experience of it generally. But when you have different planets in it, that's when it starts to add to the experience, give it a different dynamic. And something like Mercury there can materialize more in your thoughts and in how you express yourself or how you explain things to others, how you teach, how you are taught. And because the 12th house likes to take the back roads, it likes to take the scenic way. When you learn, your learning style might not be, I get spoken to by a teacher in a class and I look at the board and I retain that information. You might have to interact with the diagram, but then go discuss the diagram and then read a little bit about it and then forget about it. And one day when someone brings that topic up, you suddenly rattle off all the thoughts and the facts that you know. And next thing you know, you realize, I know so much about this topic. And that's having a 12th house Mercury. It just, information gets stored in some secret back room, and then all of a sudden you're triggered into remembering it all, and it comes out of you and you realize that you've probably mastered it because you subconsciously, because the 12th house is subconscious, you pick up on things subconsciously and log them and you keep them, and it's a very intuitive house, so you store them in you somewhere, and it takes a particular word or situation or person, state of being, that brings it out of you, and suddenly you know a lot about something and you realize it in conversation. So that's kind of the mercurial energy. And I, even though I don't have a 12th house Mercury, I can relate to it from just, I think, honestly, having a Mercury retrograde. I think it does add, personally, I think that adds a 12th house spin to it sometimes, because retrograde makes things inward and more introspective.
Yeah, as someone with a 12th house Mercury, I can say that I am a very non-linear learner, and I get really frustrated with that, especially because my Mercury is also in Virgo. So I'm very detail oriented. I'm like, I should understand it intellectually, because Virgo is very intellectual, and Virgo is like a practical level of intellectualism. And then the 12th house is impractical. It is you learning experientially and, like Winaya said, storing things in your subconscious. And so whenever I really, really appreciate something like astrology or tarot, I have in the early stages of learning gotten so frustrated because I felt like nothing was sticking. Yes. Until one day it felt like everything came flooding in, and I was like, oh my God, all of these years of things, they actually went in there, and all now these are readily accessible things in my brain. But for a while there, it felt like I was just,
it's all right,
bumbling around.